really, we just want to welcome you to the latest of our monthly events. We meet usually almost always the second Wednesday of each month, and tonight's theme, as you know, is sustainable low carbon business. So whether you're part of a business of any size, or you're just an interested resident or a customer or a consumer, you'll find tonight hopefully really informative and inspiring. We're really pleased to welcome Alan Rance of award-winning carbon, net zero and zero waste Bedford manufacturing business Midas. Alan will explain how the company was transformed into a genuinely sustainable business in a really remarkably short time. The business caught our eye last year. As you may have seen, they won the prestigious Energy Institute Energy Management Award, and they're just down the road in Bedford. So hopefully you'll have seen that, and that's one of the reasons you've signed up. I think this is going to be really interesting. In addition, we're pleased to welcome back again Jane Varley of the Green Business Network, who's presented to us before. I think it was the year before last, actually. It doesn't seem that long ago. So the Green Business Network is launching some new business support programs, and she'll be sharing some green business case studies too. So as Colin said, there'll be plenty of time at the end for questions to Alan and to Jane. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Alan to kick things off for us.
Good evening, everybody. Let's see if I can get this share screen going, and we should be good to go. There we go. So, good evening, everybody. It's nice to see so many people here. That's obviously encouraging. I'm Alan Rance. I'm a foundry pattern maker, an engineer, chartered scientist, employer, and business owner. I'm also a person who watched BBC One's Climate Change the Facts back in April 2019. And as a result, I decided I could and should do better. I was ashamed that my carbon intensive past had contributed to such a huge problem. I was even more ashamed that I'd been oblivious to the damage I was personally doing. It was obvious to me that I had to try and put things right. I had to make amends. I knew I could change things. So I decided to change every aspect of my life as quickly as I possibly could to make it as green as possible. So I became vegan. I sold my fossil fuel cars. I got into an electric vehicle. I greened my house. In fact, I greened my whole life. One of the good things, one of the really easy things was giving up flying, because I hate flying. So that was a simple one. I also started campaigning as quickly as I could to raise awareness of the problems of climate change. You might think I was a bit late to that problem, but better late than never, I say. In addition to these personal changes, I also decided to transform my business as quickly as I possibly could. I wanted to prove what can be done when a practical engineering mindset is applied to transformational change. This is the story of the journey that is the Midas Green Initiative. Midas is a market-leading polyurethane moulding company. We started trading in August 1989 and rapidly grew into a substantial business employing many local people. We specialize in the largest, the heaviest, and the most complex of instrument enclosures, which we then sell to medical device companies all around the world. We are certificated carbon neutral by the Carbon Trust. And since January this year, we are carbon net zero. So what does carbon net zero mean in the context of Midas? Well, it means we've chosen to mitigate all embedded carbon in the products we sell. And we do that by buying into the carbon futures market with locally sourced pending issuance units, and by planting thousands of trees locally within the forest of Marston Vale. At Midas, we believe that we can legitimately use earth chemistry in the form of polyurethane resin as long as we operate at carbon net zero, and we only manufacture products that are life enhancing. By that, I mean that they serve to improve the quality of life of people and patients in the form of instruments such as ventilators, rebreathers, mass spectrometers, drug analyzers, drug testing and development equipment, ophthalmology instruments, even nuclear medicine, scanning, and many other types of medical devices. Indeed, the list of our products is long, but suffice to say, when we come to work, we make all of our products with a very clear conscience. Since my Sir David and Greta epiphany on April the 18th, 2019, I've pushed as hard as I can to make amends for our carbon intensive past. I believe it's never too late to make meaningful change, and I wanted to show the world what could be done when there is a true desire to turn a business green. So we set about proving how responsible we were by doing our level best to set an example that other people and other businesses could follow. Having been in business for 32 years now and navigated several recessions and a pandemic, we're adept at applying engineering common sense to big commercial problems. Reducing our carbon footprint, improving our environmental credentials, and moving our business forwards in a responsible way was easy when we approached it in our usual determined, focused way. As Midas is a well-funded and successful business, I took the view that we had to totally recalibrate our finances. I knew we had to allocate our profits differently to make the business truly green. Once we could prove we'd invested in becoming a zero carbon business, we could then refocus and rehome our business further and hopefully replace those profits as our new green business developed. Little did I know when we began this journey that the costs of turning our business green would actually turn out to be investments that generated additional profit for the business. So, having begun the Midas Green Initiative in April 2019, we became process carbon neutral in June last year. We were carbon trust certificated at the end of last year, and then we became carbon net zero in January this year. And this is how we did it. Lots of detail on the screen now, but I'm going to run briefly through these headlines, because when you stack up all of the little changes that we made, they add up to a huge movement forwards. And so for me, it was really looking at the easy wins as quickly as possible. And we all know that the key factors in reducing our carbon footprint, obviously in therefore reducing our impact on climate change. So quick wins like simply signing up to green energy, literally as quickly as possible. You can do that in 48 hours. You know, even a business as big as ours, it's easily done. So that's obviously what we did. Signed up to 100% green electricity. We actually signed up to a shared gas deal as well, where a proportion of our gas was carbon offset and 10% was biogas. But within a couple of months, we'd realized that we could actually buy 100% biogas. Now, obviously, 100% biogas is more expensive than a blend. But if your intention is to be truly green, you don't hesitate. You don't look at the fine detail of the cost of that gas. You just get your contract signed as quickly as possible. And that's exactly what we did. We were able to secure a 3-year contract to fuel both of our factories with 100% biogas. A huge step forward that happened, as I say, within just a few weeks. Most people that have driven past our premises will have seen our solar farm. Obviously, that's been a huge addition to our business, and I'll talk more about that later. But of course, as much as it's important to buy green electricity and to use green gas, it's also important to think about the amount of those materials that you're using. So we focused hugely on reducing our electricity consumption, reducing our gas consumption, and obviously things like LED lighting enable you to do that very quickly and at relatively low cost. So both of our factories are now 100% LED illuminated. And of course, we do have a slight benefit because although we use the vast majority of solar-powered electricity that we generate, we do export a small amount of the balance. So that's useful too. And obviously it provides genuinely green power for other people to use. From an investment point of view, well, as I've already said, it really mattered to me that we redistributed profit in order to recalibrate and re-level our business. So when it came to some of these bigger investments, there wasn't really a mindset of penny pinching or really worrying about the bottom line. This was about recalibration. We would spend whatever it took to get our business into carbon neutral positioning as quickly as possible. So one of the big things we did really quickly was looking at our compressed air setup. As an engineering manufacturing business, compressed air is a life source within our business. But our compressors were 10 years old. Yeah, sure, they were cutting edge 10 years ago, but today they're far from it. So we invested in a brand new setup, installed a lot of equipment within the factory to dramatically reduce the amount of air we use. And again, I'll talk about that in a minute. Obviously, all of our lights through all of our factories, we've installed electric vehicle charging stations to encourage employees, suppliers and customers to use electric vehicles when they come to Midas and to be able to recharge them. We've invested in commercial shredding equipment. We've invested in a waste compactor to obviously reduce the volume of waste that we need to remove from the site. And of course, it was quite a substantial investment to put 650 solar panels on the roof. Alongside reducing carbon footprint and obviously working towards carbon neutrality, we looked at the waste aspect of our business. Obviously, most businesses have a hell of a lot of material coming in, which they then need to dispose of. And for us, one of the huge things was packaging. We obviously ship our mouldings in packaging, but we receive a lot of goods in packaging. And we decided to reprocess that differently, to segregate that waste and to make sure that we either reused it or recycled it in a far more responsible way. We put an initiative through the entire business where we removed single-use plastics, no matter what, from every area of the business in just 2 or 3 months. All departments now have a plethora of recycling bins, so we properly segregate our waste, and our waste is zero waste to landfill certificated, something that's very important to me. Whatever waste we have must not end up in the ground. An interesting aspect of waste reduction was looking at CO2 emissions from our delivery vehicles. So much so that we actually stopped running our own transport and started to use multi-drop couriers. Now, obviously, all of these things, they're fantastic steps forward, but I really believe that if we don't share what we're doing and use our online presence and our business platform to make other people aware, we're not doing the whole job. And so when we were fortunate enough to win the Energy Institute Award, and obviously we've won a Midlands and Eastern Region Make UK Award, we've been shortlisted for national finals as well. We use that PR really positively to encourage as many other people as we can to make some of the changes we have, or as many of the changes that we have. So much so that we now have a completely dedicated aspect on our website, which showcases all of the advances on the Midas Green Initiative. We have a Forest of Marston Vale page, which we keep updated, simply to provide as much information on our journey to the rest of Bedfordshire, to obviously the wider world, to just copy, mimic, and use what we've done wherever they think that they can to obviously improve green credentials further afield. Indeed, our partnership with the Forest of Marston Vale has given us a huge platform to do that. Silly benefits, simply passing around electricity company loyalty schemes, so much so that we've now supported nearly 30 employees to move over onto fully green tariffs, whereby there are referral codes. We've given up all of our referral bonuses to the people that have signed up, so they've effectively got a double bonus. We've lost nothing, they've gained a lot, and obviously we have more people that are buying 100% green electricity. And of course, last but not least, the fact that within the business, we've put together a green team. Obviously, most companies will have an amount of people that are truly environmentally responsible and want to do their best, potentially want to do more. Well, when you harness the energy and the enthusiasm that those people have got, you can build a team that not only then becomes more motivated, but they can find more things within your business that can be done to improve your credentials and reduce your carbon footprint. So many steps along the way that have added up to our carbon neutrality. It's very important to me that we constantly try to inspire other people and other businesses by being completely open about what we've done and who we've partnered with. So much so that we give name checks and referrals on our website. We're always highlighting how easy it is to make big changes quickly. And we'll always share any advantage we've gained if it helps to combat climate change. None of these changes that we've made have we kept to ourselves. We've shared them all, because this isn't about being selfish. This is about doing the right thing. As you've seen, there are many steps, some big, some small, on the way to becoming carbon net zero. Whatever you do will be a step in the right direction, and you'll hopefully motivate yourself and those around you to do more. Here are a few aspects of what we've done in more detail. Just going to move this screen over because it's right across my notes. It's typical, I love tech. So switching to shredding, this is a really interesting aspect, because obviously the enclosures that we make are very highly finished. They're precise, they're high quality, and they need to be protected very well during the delivery process and the storage process. And we used to do that by wrapping those moldings in packing foam, in plastic bubble wrap, and obviously by using styrofoam and polyester and polyurethane infill. And when we looked at removing all single-use plastics from the business, the one area that screamed at us was the amount of single-use plastic that we use in our packaging process. Well, obviously, one of the things that we have is so much material that comes in is in cardboard boxes. And we used to segregate it and send it off for recycling, just as you would expect us to. But we thought, well, actually, why don't we use this as a resource rather than a material that we're just going to recycle? And so we invested in a 3-phase cardboard shredding machine and started to experiment. And as you can see from this image, we were able to produce bulk fill cardboard shredding that we were able to then put within starch-based bags to create packing pillows that completely replaced the bubble wrap. We went from buying 40 rolls of bubble wrap a month to none. When you think that the cost of that bubble wrap alone was around £1,250 a month, and we simply stopped spending that money and putting that amount of single-use plastic into the environment, whilst also recycling our cardboard one more time, it was a no-brainer. We got investment payback in 6 months and moved straight into a free packaging resource that involved no single-use plastics, and it elevated our position within our customer base visually instantly. Win-win all round, and just about as environmentally friendly as it's about to get. But of course, saving us a fortune. That fortune went straight to the bottom line of our business. Why wouldn't you do that? When we look at our skip, we have a standard commercial skip, you can see images in this video, that we used to fill and have emptied once a week. That's all well and good. It's based on weight. So when it was full, there was something like 750 kilos of general waste in the skip that needed to be reprocessed over in Luton. But I looked at that and I thought, well, actually, if we could compress that, then obviously we would end up with the same amount of weight in the skip. Say 4 skipfuls would equate to 3 tons of waste to be recycled. But if we could compress it and get it into one skip movement, then we could stop 3 lorry movements from Luton to Bedford and back again. The associated carbon, the associated pollution would be completely negated if we did that. It didn't save us a penny by buying the compactor, but what it did, it meant that we went from 4 vehicle movements a month down to 1. If that doesn't show environmental responsibility, I don't know what does. I talked about compressors, or I touched on compressors. We use a lot of compressed air. We have CNC machining centres, we have shot blasting machines, we have paint spraying facilities, we have airlines. We use a lot of compressed air. And so when we did an audit on our compressed air system, and we realized that our technology was really quite seriously out of date, even though it was only 10 years old, we looked at the numbers and we decided that, yeah, it's a substantial investment in excess of 20K, but we would replace our perfect working order 10-year-old compressor with a brand new high-tech machine that would actually use 60% less energy. Now, obviously, that's 60% less cost to run, but it's also 60% less CO2 emitted. And as you can see from the figures on the screen, we calculate that that saved us 60 tons of CO2 per year, or the equivalent of 60 return flights from London to New York and back, and payback in 14 months. Now, obviously, as an environmentalist, I love that. That's great. That's setting a fine example. But as a businessman, I like the fact that after 14 months, we're saving £25,000 a year. Now, when you think those bonuses come, not as a result of a shrewd business investment, they come as the result of being a genuine environmentalist, then it's a wonderful bonus when you see both sides of your business benefit, the green side and the financial side. Solar, we're obviously quite a visible solar power user in Bedford. As you turn the corner between Shuttleworth Road and Caxton Road, you can't fail to see some of the panels that we have. We've invested in 650 360 watt panels, and our calculations are modestly that we'll create 32% of our annual power requirement. I actually think it's going to be better than that. We monitor very closely what the output is, what our usage is, and it's the figures are looking really good right now. So when you think that that's 32% of all the power we use in a year is coming off of our own roof and is therefore essentially free, well, that's nice for the bottom line. But you also have to think that that's 32% of our annual power consumption that we're not taking from the grid, that we're not taking from wind or solar that's commercially generated, so that power can be used by somebody else. That's obviously responsible. Now, the thing with the solar situation, we financed our setup using an HP agreement over 5 years. My monthly payment for my solar farm is less than the amount of money I'm saving by not buying that power from the grid. So essentially, it's self-financing. I'm making a profit from day one. Free money, planet saving. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that? some very wise words there from the forest director, James Russell. This is probably our proudest achievement, our partnership with the Forest of Marston Vale. Obviously, to move from carbon neutrality and on into carbon net zero status, we needed to look at the embedded carbon within the products that we sell. And the only way to make those products carbon neutral is to mitigate that carbon by way of using pending issuance units. Now, for us to do this, this meant that we had to make a conscious decision to take responsibility for something that's actually, in the scheme of carbon neutrality, not our problem. But I felt that although the embedded carbon within the products we sell is the responsibility of our customer, I couldn't be sure that our customers would take the same responsibility that we've done. So I simply decided to take that responsibility ourselves. And so we forged a 5-year partnership with the Forest of Marston Vale. And that now means that by obviously purchasing pending issuance units and by planting thousands of trees, we can more than mitigate the embedded carbon within our products. And that's a fact that I'm particularly proud of. I truly believe that anyone who understands and accepts the science behind climate change has a moral obligation to act now. I'm continually frustrated at the slow pace of change, the lack of international commitment, and our pitiful lack of leadership at such a pivotal time for the human race. If every person who had the slightest regard for nature played their part, we could set the pace and the tone to create the change our planet so desperately needs. Businesses are no different to individuals. Most small companies, indeed lots of larger companies as well, have a structure that means the person at the top can direct huge carbon reduction plans quickly. Any business that lags behind risks losing customers, employees, and of course profits. Ultimately, any business that refuses to show climate responsibility could potentially lose their business altogether, as companies refuse to trade with others that haven't proven their green credentials. Indeed, if any business thinks they'll be able to bluff their way through the next few years with a bit of greenwashed PR, they will be quickly undone. Of that, I'm sure. At Midas, we don't see the challenge ending now we're carbon net zero. Far from it. As we move into the future, we will constantly use the ISO 14001 standard to ensure our environmental improvements are maintained. We will look to bring on board new plant-based resins as soon as they're available. Indeed, there are already materials coming through that mimic the polyurethane foams used in the automotive industry, but are essentially made from plants. It's early days, but those materials are on their way, and when they're ready to trial, we'll be at the forefront of that. But probably most important of all, we will use our platform wherever and whenever we can to encourage others to do all that they can to reduce their carbon footprint and to play their part in helping to halt climate change. For me, for Midas, and for everyone who cares, I really believe that banging the green drum is critically important right now. We all know that we can't halt climate change alone. It seems like a hopeless challenge at times. But if we all do as much as we can and we work together and spread the word, we absolutely can build the much needed momentum. I'm always hearing about what about China, what about America? But I say, never mind them. What about you? If you do all that you can and your neighbours do the same, before you know it, we have towns, we have counties, we even have countries pulling together and setting the pace we need. If every one of us showed we cared for the environment as much as I think we do, and we weren't afraid to stand up and be counted, we could see countries like China, America, forced to push much harder. If we do nothing, they'll do nothing. But if we do as much as we can, who knows? After all, we're renowned as a nation of animal lovers and gardeners, aren't we? So let's crack on and show the world that it isn't just pattern makers who can rise to the global challenge of halting climate change. If you'd like to know more about what we're doing, the detail of what we're doing, and the other aspects of the Midas Green Initiative that I haven't had time to talk about, then please find us on Instagram, find us on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. Give us a follow. Keep up to speed with what we're doing. And above all, please keep an eye on our website, midas-pattern.co.uk. We have dedicated green pages. We have videos and green initiative chat. We have a dedicated page to the Forest of Marston Vale. It's interesting stuff. We share all our IP there, all of our green advantage there. And we'd love you to keep an eye on that if you could. Thank you very much for coming along and listening to me waffle on. Obviously, you probably gathered, I can talk all night. I'm on a deadline tonight, but I can talk all day and all night about this. And I'd love to share it with anybody that was interested. So if there are any questions, I'd love to take them. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, feel free to do so directly through the Midas website or our social media. Thank you very much for listening.
Alan, thank you so much. I think you've blown everyone away with your passion for the subject. You know, the impressive journey the company's been on and the story that is impressive, I think, you know, that those sort of seeds that were planted, well, more of a seeds, more of a bomb maybe, by David Attenborough, you know, a few years ago. So your absolute passion comes through so clearly to everyone, I'm sure. I mean, you've portrayed really well the sort of moral obligation and the personal commitment, but the win-wins as well. So as you kept saying, why wouldn't you? To act now, the imperative is so strong and the win-wins are there, whether you're a business large or small, and as you said, in your sort of personal life as well. So thank you so much. Before we have questions for you, hopefully people have got some questions ready, but we're going to go to Jane Varley from the Green Business Network. So if everyone has questions ready for Alan afterwards, and also I'm sure you have some questions for Jane, because Alan is a sort of wonderful case study, Alan and Midas, and Jane is at the real business end, working with lots of businesses, supporting them and advising them on how to make this journey, the pitfalls, the legislation, the small wins, the big wins. So if Jane, you're ready, we'll pass over to you. I wonder if Colin can, or Alan, can you unshare the screen? I'm not sure.
Of course. Bear with. I've got that many things on my screen right now.
Just to say to people, if you look at the chat, I've put in Midas's website. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. It was on our publicity anyway, but we will be sharing some links in there as well. Right, Jane, over to you.
Okay, right. I'll just fire up my presentation. Where up? Of course, it's right in the way. Okay, first of all, before I start, actually, I'd just like to say thanks ever so much to Alan. That was an amazing presentation, and I just wish every business that we dealt with took exactly the same approach as you, because you're absolutely textbook. This is what we would anticipate any business doing. They would have an MD that was committed and passionate and actually just went for it. It's rare to find that, I have to say, and I wish more businesses were like it. In the meantime, we're working with less perfect businesses. So we are in the process at the Green Business. First of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm actually the manager of the Green Business Network. We are operating currently in Bedfordshire, Milton Keynes and Northamptonshire. And basically what we are is we're a charity that was set up primarily in Bedfordshire about 25 years ago by a group of businesses in conjunction with the local authority. And it was primarily led by some local business people who said, we need to do something about our environmental impacts. And what they did was set up a business network for companies to get together to actually share best practice and to learn from each other. Subsequently, we've run many projects. We've helped many businesses. We've had plenty of funding from local authorities, from Europe, so on and so forth. And we are continually working with new and different businesses, and also businesses who started the journey with us and have stuck with us and now share their best practice with others, but also they're continually learning. So essentially what we do is we bring together businesses to help each other obviously reduce water, waste, energy, design their products more sustainably, work on not damaging too much biodiversity on site, and basically putting environmental issues at the forefront of their decision making. We also help businesses by making sure that they don't break the law and end up on the front pages of the local rag, or the national rag for that matter. Financial penalties and punishments are getting worse, and I'm kind of hoping that they will get progressively worse for companies that do break the law over the next few years. Okay, so we currently have a support program, which is something that we will be continuing, which will comprise sustainability seminar program, which is essentially where we have a series of topics throughout the year. It's very similar to what BCCF is doing in lots of ways, where we will take a topic like waste, we'll have an expert speaker, and basically people will share their best practice around that topic. We do those once a month. We also offer virtual advice and support. We will be offering an online member directory very shortly. And obviously there is the element of networking and best practice sharing with like-minded businesses. That henceforward will be our basic membership package. We're also now about to launch several new initiatives, one of which is going to be called Green Connectors. Now, this is a specific network for providers of green solutions. So that's any company really that is actually providing either green consultancy or a green product, a green service. And what we're aiming to do effectively is build a network of companies who will build relationships with each other and refer each other to their own clients. So with the aim of this really is to build green supply chains. So if you've got a company that goes into a business and maybe provides them with food for their canteen, and the company is then looking for another company to provide them with, I don't know, maybe something like refurbished computer equipment, they would then have the contact within this particular network to say, I know somebody who can. And essentially that way, we're hoping that we're going to get collaboration between those types of businesses and increase a massive awareness of where people can buy green. Whilst at the same time, obviously, we will be increasing the business opportunities for those companies that are part of this network. We're going to be launching this particular offering on the 20th of May. You can find details on our website, and I will publish the details of that a bit later. Moving swiftly on, we will also be launching a new ISO 14001 program, really ideally aimed at SMEs who don't want to go through the sort of very complex offering that an awful lot of people use to produce the 14001 certification. So the approach we will be taking essentially is to hold 10 sessions on the standard. We will provide templates, we'll provide basically the format of the management system. We will also do a day on site so that we can actually look at, provide a gap analysis, look at where you need to make improvements, suggest what you can do to actually improve your impacts. The advantages of 14001 essentially are that it keeps you within the law, it lets you know what you ought to be doing to ensure that you're not breaking the law, first and foremost. It helps you control and reduce your environmental impacts. On the plus side, it will help when you're tendering for contracts. Wearing a different hat, I do actually write bids for companies. And this is becoming more and more a demand of government contracts and local authority contracts, is that they want people to demonstrate their environmental credentials. A best way, or one of the best ways of doing that, is to achieve 14001, because that basically means you tick one box and then the rest of the questions that are there, which are lengthy, let me tell you, don't need to be answered. There are also, obviously, there are PR benefits from achieving 14001. And also, at the end of the day, I would echo exactly what Alan has been telling you. Good business basically means you're eliminating waste, you're reducing resource use, and you're saving costs. It's a win-win-win. Okay, so that's the next part of our program. We're also looking at running a program for startups, which is going to be for those in very early stages of business and those considering starting a business. And this is probably the best time to catch people when they've not actually sort of got their factory or their office or whatever it happens to be, and they're designing their product. So our aim really is to help them to try to embed sustainability from the outset. So we would be looking at things like, obviously, still meeting the law, controlling waste, but also looking at areas like circular economy and how they design their products, so that those products may be, can either be zero waste from the outset, if that's at all possible, maybe considering the use of different materials, the way they package them, the way they transport them, so on and so forth. So we're looking to run a 5-week program on that, which will actually look at a whole range of environmental issues, I think, that they hopefully will consider right at the start. And finally, we are currently developing what we're calling a green leadership program for SME owners and directors, which would be essentially a program that would take business leaders through the same kind of process that Alan has just described, but also would facilitate them actually collaborating with each other to make improvements, to become green leaders, to become role models. And actually all of this essentially is part of future-proofing your business. If you don't do this, essentially you're not going to have a business. And greener business is a better business generally. So that's the programs we have on offer at the moment, and the ones that we're about to be bringing out in the future. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the measures the companies that we've worked with in the past have actually taken. I'm not going to do a full-scale case study on any one. I'll just sort of throw out a few ideas. So we had, starting with the simple, very large employer in Milton Keynes saved 150k a year by switching off their computers overnight. It's a bit balmy, isn't it, when you think, you know, you just flick a switch and they're off and £150,000 goes onto your bottom line straight away. We had another company which basically worked with their supply chain to create a circular chain of using packaging. So effectively they had a packaging, if they hadn't sent it back to be refilled, would become hazardous waste because of what it actually contained. So rather than saying, right, we're going to skip this and put it in the haz waste skip and it's all going to go into a landfill, which is effectively what happens to most hazardous waste, they basically sent it back to be refilled. And so this packaging was kept in circulation and there was nothing going into the landfill. We had another company that basically worked with their suppliers to use plastic pallets rather than wooden pallets, which kind of sounds, everybody goes plastic, ooh. But sometimes if you're working with, he found that working with plastic pallets actually made them more durable. So instead of sort of stuff getting broken all the time or just disposed, effectively these pallets were doing the rounds, and they were doing the rounds again and again and again. So you're actually reducing waste, you're making a product that's far more durable. We've had several companies who have switched to LED lighting, which has not only saved them masses of carbon, it's saved them a lot of money actually as well. We had Millbrook Proving Ground, who have to reduce their litter on site and to sort of give their staff a bit of a G-up and a bit of fun actually. To reduce the litter on site, they actually borrowed a bunch of supermarket trolleys and did a supermarket sweep to see who could pick up the most litter. And at the end of it, the guys with the fullest trolley actually won a prize. So there are all kinds of things going on. We've had a lot of companies who've reused their packaging, whether that's cardboard shredded or cardboard split. Actually, a couple of companies have done that as well, which obviously, as Alan said, it's reduced the packaging waste that they're generating themselves, and also they're able to save costs by repackaging. Another company eliminated using plastic cups by buying an energy efficient dishwasher and giving their staff mugs to use. We had a leisure centre that actually, apparently swimming pools, for every person that goes in, 3 litres of water have to come out. So you're actually constantly changing water. So what they actually did, rather than actually take that down the drain, they used it to flush their toilets. So there are all kinds of good initiatives going on. We had another company who, through a process they were using, produced ultra clean processed water. Rather than sticking that down the drain, they used it to mop their floors and do their cleaning. There are just stories upon stories upon stories, but it's actually getting those out to as many businesses as possible. And if everybody here can refer people to, obviously, to Alan's website, to our website, to us, then hopefully we can get some momentum going and actually try to get more people involved and on the move with this, because we ain't got much time left, folks. And that's me done.
Excellent, thank you, Jane. I think you've emphasised the points that Alan made really well about sharing good practice, talking about it, the risk that your business runs if you don't start on this journey pretty quickly, and the bottom line as well. So it's that there's the moral obligation, there's the urgency, and then there's the win-win financially. You've just yeah. If listening to you two doesn't give people impetus, then I don't know, I'm just going to give up and I'd say go home, but I'm already home, of course. But yeah, thank you so much. So hopefully now is the chat open, Colin, so that people can because we did mute it. So because although it's great to have comments through, sometimes it can be distracting when you're trying to listen to someone, but you're also trying to read what people have put in the chat. So yeah, feel free with your questions now. Just while people are thinking about questions they might like to ask or comments, I wanted to ask Alan about the leadership aspect, because you were saying there's sort of a lack of leadership nationally and globally or locally, you know, and the importance of leadership in a business. But how do you get colleagues and employees on board? Is that a really difficult thing to do, to persuade them? Because often it's going to be extra work. How do you get them on board?
That's an easy one. The green team. Our business employs on average 75 to 80 people. I think probably 10, 12 of those people are passionate. 10 or 12 people out of 80, you know, it makes life so easy. You've got 15% of your workforce that are then looking for recycling opportunities, tidiness opportunities, reuse opportunities. Once you empower those people, well, then you don't really have to worry about everybody else, because fundamentally it's a business. Most people we employ are pretty happy to do what we ask them to do. That's the deal. So if you've got a green team, keeping an eye on what's going on, keeping everything on the straight and narrow, you find you've got a whole factory pulling behind you before you know it. It just becomes part of the day-to-day mechanics of running the business. It's a bit like explaining to somebody why throwing their McDonald's waste out of their car window whilst driving down the A428 is not a good idea. Once they've realised there's no waste on the road, is there? And just, it seems to me that all these things, every single example that Jane gave is obvious. All you need is to get your workforce to see the obvious and then stick to the plan. Now, it's hard to get people to do the same things all the time and to stay on the ball and to be as responsible as they can. But all you need is 15% of your workforce keeping an eye on what's going on. Before you know it, you're 100% tidy. You're 100% responsible. I think it's really straightforward. Okay, brilliant. So you've got that team, you've got them activated and motivated, and it becomes the norm. Jane, a question for you. Are there instances where you've seen that sort of leadership coming from the bottom, where there's been a passionate employee, maybe of a smaller business, who's, you know, come up with ideas? Maybe this is wishful thinking. Are there examples of that where people have made a difference from lower down?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, two immediately spring to mind, both in Luton, oddly enough. There was one business who, I think probably at the time we had a bit of free money knocking about. So we ran the Business Environmental Training Initiative, as we called it at the time, and that was putting companies through 14,001. And it was a company that had a contract with M&S when M&S announced their Plan A strategy, and they really wanted to be seen to be green, to be working with them. So one of their staff actually went, yeah, okay, we'll run with this for a bit. So we did an awful lot of work with them. And at the end of it, they actually won an award. Now, the award got publicised quite heavily. And all of a sudden, this is an American-owned company. The American headquarters are saying to this lady, can you do this on other sites? And eventually, it snowballed across the entire company. And the management became very, very interested in what she was doing. And also, obviously, there were cost savings and all sorts of other stuff involved. It was a food company, so the implications were quite amazing. But it started off really with this lady just reducing waste. And it was looking at what they could do with the waste that they were producing and actually stop producing some of it. And that was one incident. There was another incident where there was another one of our companies, which is actually a wine it's not a wine producing company, it's a wine distributor based in Luton. And there were a couple of the members of staff who wanted to do something to make their operation greener, and they actually, bless them, took the whole company through ISO 14001 on their own and just basically went, okay, can we do this? They got permission from management, got management buy-in afterwards, and they've gone from strength to strength. Absolutely amazing tales. It can happen, but it's much better if you've got somebody like Alan going, we're going to do this. It's much easier.
Excellent, I'm sure it is, but good to know if you're someone who's an employee in a firm that you can also, you know, make a difference and start a company off on this journey as well. That's really good to hear. So we've got some questions here. Thank you, everyone. So the first one was, I think, from Heather, who says, brilliant talk, so encouraging for us all. She said, I did wonder though, what happens to the 10-year-old machine that you replace with the latest low carbon model? So what happened to it, Alan, when it went off?
Well, if I didn't know better, I'd say I'd planted that question, because that's spot on for me to answer, and I'll tell you why. The company that we use for all our compressed air systems and our maintenance, when we did the deal to replace our old setup, I was absolutely crystal clear that I didn't want them to come in, take our old machine away and sell it on to someone else. That really mattered to me. So I actually got written commitment that they would take that machine apart, use any parts for spares that were possible, but then recycle the rest of it. And the reason I did that is really simple. If you're driving around in a 20-year-old diesel car and you decide to buy an EV, if you're truly green, you don't want that diesel car being sold to someone else and carrying on doing its damage. And I took exactly that view with my old compressor. I didn't want it being resold. So the guys we work with, they were first class, they agreed to that. And so they took our old compressor away, took it to bits. I'm sure there's bits of that on the shelf that are going to service other machines, and the rest of it's gone off for recycling. It's metal when all's said and done.
Excellent. You're not going to catch Alan out, Heather. Good try. So, Ready, Steady, Roll from Sharnbrick says, hi, Alan, what was the company route that you got your solar panels with? They're very visually impressive, aren't they? Can't miss them.
Well, people that know me know I bang on about the power of the universe, and this is a really good example of that. I was thinking I might like to put solar panels on my roof. I thought that'd be a good idea. And as I was sat here thinking that, the phone rang, and it was a cold call from a solar panel installation company up in the northwest of England. And because I was thinking it, it's impossible to get me at my desk. No one can get to me. I've got a receptionist who's made of iron. She's amazing. But I took the call. And this guy started talking to me about what they do, what they wouldn't do, and all the rest of it. And I said, you know what, it's your lucky day. Present to me. And so a week or so later, I got a presentation, an online shared screen jobby, and it blew my mind. The quality of the presentation, the modeling that had been done based on the half-hourly data that we provided showed that whether we were looking at 4, 5, 6, 7-year HP agreements or outright purchase agreements, it made it really obvious how there was absolutely no reason to not do this. And essentially, within a couple of weeks, I just thought, do you know what? I'm not going to trawl around the world looking for 10 companies to get 10 quotes from. If I'm saving money, I'm saving money. If I'm making money, I'm making money. They'll do. Their presentation was first class, their timing was perfect, and I jumped on and I've not looked back.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alan. And Ready, Steady, Roll, you can have a look at the Midas website as well for more information on that, I think. So Tara and Ben say, Alan, are your green team employed specifically for that role, or is this in addition to their other job? So that's a good question. Does it mean their workload increases, or is it kind of alongside?
Tara and Ben, great question, thank you. Really easy to answer that. Absolutely not. Everybody that works here earns their money manufacturing day in, day out. But if you're an environmentalist, if you've got a green mind, if you care about the planet, that's with you every second of every day anyway. So all we do is tap into that. Of course, as a business, we benefit because we're getting all those additional ideas, all that additional motivation and momentum. But those employees are getting listened to. They're getting airtime. They're getting the opportunity to make a difference at work as well as at home. So we absolutely don't need to go looking for people to employ to look after the green side of our business. They're already here. All we have to do is unlock their potential, empower them, and give them a platform.
Great, thank you. So this question from Pip, who's on our committee. She says, I'd be interested in your thoughts on the merits and challenges of net zero offsetting versus reducing carbon in-house and how the two can work together.
Yeah, okay, we'll cut to the chase now. This is serious. Obviously, I wish we didn't have to rely on purchasing woodland carbon units, pending issuance units, obviously planting trees. I know all these things take time to actually mitigate the embedded carbon in the products that we sell. But as I sit here, I have a choice. I can do nothing, or I can do the very best I can right now to mitigate that carbon, which is obviously by, in inverted commas, offsetting. But of course, we've all got to look at the embedded carbon in the first place, and I absolutely respect that. So, of course, when we're giving design for manufacturer support, we're looking at reducing the mass of polyurethane within a particular part, because quite clearly, the lighter the part is, the less carbon that there is in it. We're looking to optimize shape and design, so it's fit for purpose, but obviously it contains the minimum amount of carbon. And of course, as I said in the presentation, as new materials come through, they can't come soon enough for me, obviously, but as they come through, we'll jump on, we'll trial, we'll develop. We obviously have a strong R&D program here, and we'll be able to then actually remove carbon at source. But until that day comes, all I can do is my very best to mitigate, offset, and be responsible. And I take that really seriously. I hope that doesn't sound like I've sidestepped the question, because I really don't mean to do that. It's just we've got the cards that we've been dealt, and we have to play them as wisely as we can.
Thanks, Alan. I think, to be honest, one of the reasons I thought it was interesting to have you come and speak is because you're a manufacturing business. And what you do is it's not a typically eco-green sort of, you know, a lovely vegan cafe or something. You're really manufacturing real world stuff and really important medical equipment. We're living in a pandemic, aren't we? So it's real world stuff. And so that makes it sort of not so straightforward, does it? But I think you've given us an honest answer. So Jane, have any of your clients, Jane's on our committee as well, she says, have any of your clients, Alan, followed your example and made dramatic changes to follow your example? I wonder about your neighbours as well, actually, your clients and neighbours and suppliers.
Yeah, absolutely, they have. Spot on question. I have neighbours that I can see through my office window that are talking about solar panels right now. I've got suppliers. I've got one particular supplier, almost identically sized business in turnover and headcount over in Northampton. Not a competitor, but a plastics manufacturer in a different arena. Obviously, they know how sensitive plastics are now. And so they're looking at doing everything that they possibly can. They've been here. We've effectively reviewed the presentation that you've seen today. They've gone through everything that we've done at every level. They have employed a green person to take their business from where it is now to carbon neutral as quickly as possible. And I've extended every courtesy I can. I've told them I'll hold their hand all the way, because ultimately anyone that's prepared to put their money where their mouth is and make the change, well, I'll support. You know, I'm not interested in greenwashing one bit, but real life action with people who really care, that actually want to move their business into carbon neutrality as quickly as possible. Well, we should applaud those companies, and I, for one, will do all I can to help them.
Brilliant. And someone who's gone first and seen the pitfalls and the, you know, the ways to, you know, things you might have avoided differently or done differently, you know, tips, top tips, all that kind of thing is really useful, isn't it, to save someone, you know.
The thing is, Lucy, there aren't any pitfalls. There's normal day-to-day stress, as there is just trying to get a parcel delivered through Royal Mail and it arrive on time is a challenge. You know, hoping everybody turns up on a Monday morning is a challenge. When it comes to greening your business, it's all opportunity. And the thing that I've learned is there aren't any pitfalls, there's only gains. You know, not only do you get the kudos, not only do you get the positive PR, not only do you get the future proofing, but you get the satisfaction of knowing you've done the right thing. And by the way, put more money on the bottom line. There's no pitfalls, just crack on.
Win-wins. It's music to Jane's ear, I think. So Keith says, could Alan give us some examples of how he's greened his products by implementing 3D printing, changing from steel components to carbon fibre, optimizing design using the latest modeling techniques?
Well, there's a number of questions there. First thing that goes through my mind is I wouldn't really be worrying about moving from steel to carbon fibre, because obviously with steel, you have a material that's 100% recyclable. Well, I like that always. With carbon fibre, can't recycle it in the conventional way. You may be able to reprocess it and reuse it in other ways, but you can't turn it back into carbon fibre. So for me, it's always about looking at the raw materials you're using, trying to use materials that can be 100% recycled or, as a second tier, reused. 3D printing, well, we don't get involved in 3D printing. What we do is CNC machining, which is subtractive manufacturing. And one of the things there that we've done is our tooling process essentially works in this way. We CNC machine a master pattern from a polyurethane tooling board, and then we make a composite resin mold tool from that pattern. Now that pattern, once we've made the mold tool, is surplus to requirements and actually then goes off for repurposing. It gets ground up and it gets turned back into second-rate boards or used as a bulk filler. Well, obviously the thing there is to use the minimum amount of raw material. So whereas we used to design a block and then machine the shape into it, now we design a shape which has got an A and B surface form so that we're using less material from the outset. And so once again, we're putting less waste into recycling and we're spending less money on raw material in the first place. It's added in a cost because obviously within our CAD process, we're having to design the B surface, which we didn't used to do. But do you know what? That's the price I'm prepared to pay. You could argue it's offset by the fact that we're not using as much material, but it's just thinking about within the process you have, what is the most responsible, the most environmentally positive thing that you can do, and then introduce those small changes. I'm just thinking, Keith, what else did he say in his question? 3D we've talked about, steel we've talked about, optimizing design. Well, that's actually a really, really good point. As I just touched on, when a customer sends us a CAD model for a part they want us to make in polyurethane, for instance, if it's 10 mil thick and in our opinion it would work perfectly well at 5, well, we can go back and we can suggest they reduce that wall thickness. Well, in that example, they could reduce their material use by 50%. So they'll have 50% less carbon in it. So we're always trying to optimize customers' designs so that not only are they manufacturable and the highest possible quality and fit for purpose, but we can design out some of the embedded carbon, which obviously is crucial.
Thanks, Alan. There's a question from Jane, which you've sort of partly answered. Are you looking at circular economy principles when designing and redesigning products?
Yeah, we absolutely are. It's worth remembering that we only make product that we think is going to be life enhancing, because above all else, I'm aware of where our raw material comes from. And I want to use the minimum amount of raw material, and I want to use it as responsibly as I can. So I've chosen the medical and the analytical device sector as an area where I think the products that we make are worthwhile and they're life enhancing. Now, that often means that those products will be in service for 10, 20, 25 years. So obviously from a circular economy point of view, we're stretching out that time frame. So rather than it being something which can be recycled over and over again within the first year, we're looking at something that's going to have a serviceable life, that's going to enhance life for potentially 25 years. And then when it gets to the end of its life, it can be reprocessed and reused, as I said earlier, as a bulk filler or a raw material for a different process. And although not 100% recyclable, because polyurethane is a thermosetting material, you can't then generate the same product again with it, but you can keep it moving through the circular economy and being used elsewhere. So more of a repurposing, I guess. So I think as much as we can, we absolutely are.
Thank you. Dominic, along similar lines, reiterates what you're saying about durable plastic being really valuable. And if obviously if it's used and reused many times, and obviously the future being plant-based materials, so the life cycle of the product would be carbon negative and wouldn't.
I'm looking at the question as you're reading the question there, and there's obviously a number of facets. I am particularly negative about landfill. I understand the point that Dominic's made, and we could probably talk about that for a long time. But for me, the issue here, I'm very, very negative about single-use plastics, mainly because there is so much volume of single-use plastics, and we have so many people who simply have blatant disregard for the environment, and the two together obviously equates to a horrendous situation. Invariably, that waste will end up in the sea. So very negative about single-use plastics. I think we need to use our creativity and obviously our ingenuity to avoid single-use plastics wherever we can. But of course, I'm a very positive plastic user, as long as the use of that plastic can be shown to be long-term and responsible and recyclable. It's no good making a recyclable part if the food chain that uses it ends up putting it on the beach and in the sea. So we need to avoid that. Always the most environmentally friendly option is the one where that product is only going to be used for benefit and is then going to be truly recycled. So I think the issue here is more about the controls and the techniques and systems that surround the use and the disposal and the reuse of the products that are made in plastic. Yeah, I think it's a very big subject, and I think we need to be very careful when we either applaud plastic or slate plastic. We need to look at the use, what the options are, what the alternatives are, and think, is there any alternative? And the best example of that I can think of is the replacement heart valve. I, for one, am not going to criticise the need to use plastics in such applications.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good example. So Colin has a question. I mean, you've partly answered this, really, talking about the future. Colin says, if you've gone green as a business, how possible is it to go greener still? We know you're doing your ISO certification and your 500 trees you're doing every year. What reaching for the stars?
Well, I think he was probably sitting in my office this afternoon when we were having a conversation about what we're going to do next. Because the most frustrating thing is getting to the destination. You know, arguably, we got the certificates on the wall. We're totally auditable. I think we're pretty watertight. But it's not enough. Obviously, we can use less material. We can reduce waste. We can save more power. We can do so many things to improve the standard of the carbon neutrality we have and the amount of PIUs that we need to purchase to offset embedded carbon in customer products. So you never get there. You never get to the end point unless, of course, you are legitimately carbon net zero without purchasing any offsets or any PIUs. And frankly, we're a long way from that. So ISO 14001 is a really easy standard to put in place once you've been Carbon Trust certificated to carbon neutrality. It's simply another step that we'll take to validate the journey we've been on. But the great thing about 14001 is it demands constant improvement. And that's where the green team come back to the table and we say, right, this is what we've done. Let's all give each other a big pat on the back. But what more can we do? What's the next step? Because there will always be something else. And that's when it comes down to just constantly looking at the detail, never being satisfied with what you've achieved and just pushing further. You know, it's summed up by the phrase, the constant pursuit of perfection. You never get there, but you can try. And that's certainly where our mindset is.
Excellent. So Jane says, what happens to your products when they reach the end of their useful life? Okay, so as I said earlier, our material, our polyurethane resin, is a thermosetting polymer. And that means that you can't, once you've created a part, you can't heat it up, melt it and turn it into something else. So what you have to do with them is grind them up. So literally they go through a grinder. All recycling these days goes through a grinder of some sort. And then the material you granulate, and then you use those granules as either a bulk filler in, for instance, cementitious products, so road curbs and curb edgings and things like that, where you've got a super high carbon content, which you can reduce by obviously using less material within the part, by bulk filling with a polyurethane resin such as ours. Or of course, you can mix it with more new resin and create a tooling board type process, which is what we use for the patterns that we make at the start of our process. So although we can't recycle and go again,
we can certainly reuse and repurpose by using those granules to make other products, or to use less carbon-based product as we go forwards.
Brilliant. Dominic's just come back to say he was being a bit provocative about the plastics, but he just wanted to point out about the constant reuse, the durability, I think. But he's got a really good question also about greening the business. How much more difficult would it have been if your business was publicly listed? He says, I think the sort of really great, strong leadership he's showing seems really hard for businesses that are beholden to shareholders and the sort of tyranny of quarterly profits reports. That's a good question.
It's a really good question, and it makes me smile because I've said this before to customers and to staff. Tongue in cheek, communism is alive and well at Midas. And so we have the very fortunate position that we're very much a pyramid structure. And I'm very lucky that I've got a lot of good people who follow my lead and want to go in the direction that I want to go. So we don't tend to argue too much. We get things done quickly and we have a huge amount of support. If we were publicly listed, if we were surrounded by shareholders with a multitude of opinions and agendas, then I can absolutely see how challenging it would be then. But ultimately, and I really mean this, there's nothing more important than climate change. I don't give a damn about the bottom line if I've got no green fields to walk through. And I think as time goes by, and obviously it will never be quick enough for me, you, or the vast majority of people that are on this webinar tonight, but I think the vast majority of people, given time, will come round to realizing that this is the #1 priority. And I think when we get to that point, then those shareholders in those PLCs, in those listed companies, their primary agenda will be based around environmentalism and carbon footprinting. And we just, I hate to say the word, but we have to be patient, but I believe it will come. We just have to do all that we can to make that happen more quickly.
Absolutely. There isn't much time, is there? And I think it's about sort of resilience, future resilience, and also risk, isn't it? You know, as we've said before, if they don't get on and do this, they're putting their business at huge risk in all respects. So Ready Steady Roll's got a question for Jane. So Jane, this is a nice question for you. Do you work with small businesses too? We're a small cafe shop, so our footprint is quite small already. I feel, so I wondered if it's worth it or if you just focus on bigger companies. So how much is the cost, and how much is the cost of the 14001, the ISO? And why is it called that? That's a good question. I don't know. Why is it called that?
Right. Okay. First of all, yes, we very much work with small businesses. We work with everything from a one-man band up to a multinational. And indeed, we have members of that sort of profile, plenty of very small businesses. We have a couple of small cafes and shops already. What else was there?
Why is
why is 14,001 called 14,001?
Not very snappy, is it?
I do know the answers to this one, weirdly. It is a series of standards that were developed by the international, well, originally by the British Standards Institution, but they then became adopted by the International Standards Organization, which is the ISO part of it, and they basically get numbered sequentially. So 14,001 will have been the follow-on from 13,099, well, 13,999 presumably, but that is why it's called 14,001. The cost of actually getting certification to that really depends on the size of your company. I wouldn't advocate it for a very, very small company unless you need it to tender for contracts. But what I would say is the principles of it are great. And the other thing that I think GBN are going to be working on very shortly is developing, there are sort of light versions, if you like, of 14,001. But they tend, even the light versions tend to be a bit heavy. So I think what we will be looking at very shortly is looking at sort of just the very basics of 14,001 that we can help smaller companies to embed in their organisations. That's one coming later this year. Membership currently is 120 quid a year plus VAT. So that's 10 quid a month effectively. So not a huge sum.
It's a bargain, and for the benefits and the knowledge and the support and the new programs you've explained about, Jane.
Yeah, they will be.
Yeah,
they will be additional. That's not included in the 120. Good grief.
it sounds like there's something for everyone though.
Yeah,
of all sizes and all types of business.
We're hoping so, yeah. And if anybody obviously has any suggestions, please, don't hesitate to contact me. That's what I'm here for.
Thanks, Jane. So I've put the website just in case anyone hasn't seen it's in the chat. So Colin, this is a big question from Colin that we kind of touched on, but it is a big question. What's holding back the rest of the industry, Alan, from going as far and as fast as you have?
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, isn't it? Absolutely nothing. People may be afraid of cost, but hopefully I've demonstrated tonight that the investment you make will get a return. This will all add money to the bottom line. I didn't know that when I started, but I do now. And anybody that wants to understand what we've done will soon see how much money can be made by doing the right thing. I just think there's a general reluctance at the highest level to do the right thing. And I don't understand why that is. That's why we need to spread the word, build momentum, encourage people. And frankly, that's the only reason I talk about the financial side of the Midas Green Initiative, because I know so many people aren't interested in the green side. I hate to say it, but they're not, but they are interested in the bottom line. So do you know what? If they green their business and they help save the planet and they make a ton of money en route, well, good luck to them. At least we, as environmentalists, get what we need and we want. I don't care what someone's motivation is, do the right thing. And I just think we need to bang that drum. We need to use these platforms and encourage these people, these business owners, these shareholders that are sitting on the fence, pontificating about what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. They need to understand the time is now. We do not have long enough to keep talking. We need to crack on and take action because the clock's ticking. It really is.
Well said, Alan. The sense of urgency is impossible to underestimate, isn't it? And I think just going back to your original sort of impetus for this journey was quite an emotional, wasn't it? It was quite an emotional one, watching Climate Change, the Facts, the David Attenborough film. I imagine most people here have seen it, but if you haven't, watch it and share it with someone immediately. There are so many films at the moment, aren't there, about climate change and the environment, but I think that one is so immediately like visceral. I mean, you can't turn away and you can't instantly forget it. So the fact, I really like the fact that sort of was part of your impetus, because I think it has to, that belief has to be there, doesn't it, to lead on something like this, like you have.
It was an absolutely pivotal moment. It was huge because I just sat down to watch TV like you do. I think it was a Thursday night. I thought, this looks interesting. I'll see what's going on. I've been a lifelong fan of David Attenborough, didn't know too much about Greta. And I just could not believe that I was so ignorant in my own behaviour. I call myself a naturalist. I call myself an animal lover. I call myself a hiker. Well, what was I doing? Cars, meat, flying, making polyurethane moldings. What the hell? You don't see what's in front of your face. And all it took was 60 minutes of two of the most inspirational people the planet's ever seen. And I thought, we have to change now. We have to change now. And in the space of a weekend of thinking about what I could do, obviously changing power provider, changing gas provider, double glazing my whole house, putting a brand new energy efficient boiler in, getting rid of my cars, buying an electric car, all those things that I listed, well, you can think those in 5 minutes, can't you? It doesn't take long to work out where your 15 tons a year of carbon footprint can be reduced down to 1 or 2. What you then have to do is do it. Well, luckily, I've been gifted with the ability to make things happen. And so it wasn't difficult. And each step of the way, your self-respect and your whole perception on the power that you actually have grows and grows and grows. And before you know it, not only have you changed your whole world personally, you've changed your whole professional world. You feel better for it, and you're inspiring other people. You're building momentum. There is nothing more important than building momentum. That came from 60 Minutes on BBC One. It's as simple as that.
So everyone watch it if you haven't. Thanks, Alan. Philip has put a nice comment. Thank you so much for tonight. I love the passion from both the presenters this evening. Thanks again. And this perhaps is our last question, as we need to wind down, from Jane. Thinking ahead to the end of this year, what would each of you say to our political leaders, she's put in inverted commas, to make them take COP26 seriously? I think so. Alan, what do you think first? If there's one thing that you could say to them, everything you said tonight condensed into a...
It's not possible for me to say what I think live and in front of good people, because I absolutely lack faith in our political leadership. Okay, so COP26, obviously, just like all previous climate conferences, is critical, because another year's gone by. And here we are, and we watch these people sit and theoretically lead us as people forward, making the right decisions, making decisions that are going to affect us all. And I hear hot air over and over again. I hear pacification. I hear vote winning. I hear meaningful noise. I don't see action. I don't see passion. The passion is in front of the lectern, not behind it. And this really frustrates me. And that's why, if I'm honest, I think it's so much more important now for individuals, small businesses, SMEs, people on the street, people that protest, people that care, people that just look after themselves in a green way. They can make a change today and tomorrow. And if we sit around waiting for our leadership to tell us what to do and to make funding available so we can green our houses, we're going to wait a long time. So do you know what? I'm glad COP26 is happening. We believe it's going to happen. I'm still not sure, but we believe it's going to happen. And it will give us a platform, and it will put climate change back into the public domain again. But do you know what? Don't hold your breath. Don't wait for huge change to happen there. Get on with it yourself now. Encourage your neighbour to do the same. Encourage everyone that you can that's open-minded to do more. And if we all do that, we can create the much needed change from the bottom up, because it's certainly not coming from the top down.
Well said, Alan. Jane, follow that. Thoughts on COP26? What would you say?
Do it.
Ditto.
What more can I say? Get on with it.
Yeah. It's up to all of us to really pile the pressure on, isn't it? Because the leaders are not going to, they're not going to take this action unless they hear from people. So, yeah.
If I can just say one more thing to that question. What it says, what do you say to our political leaders to make them take COP26 seriously? Well, I would say, what are our political leaders going to do so that we take them seriously?
Good question. Thank you both. So I think we probably, unless anyone has any other questions, I think we need to wind up because it's 9 o'clock. So thank you both so much. It's been fascinating. It's been informative. Really no nonsense inspiration, real world stuff, practical stuff. So I hope people who've come along have found it interesting and feel that they'd like to go and share the message with other people. So as we told you, this has been recorded, so it will be on our YouTube channel shortly. Well, probably in a couple of days, but we'll follow up with an email. If you registered on Eventbrite, I'll send you the links to that. But also please do keep in touch. So just in the chat, I'm just going to put all useful links here. Did that work? No, it didn't work. Hold on. But also I need to tell you about our next month's event. Oh, there we go. Yes, it did work. So as you know, we meet normally the second Wednesday of every month. with different speakers, sometimes films. Since December, our sort of theme generally has been actually agriculture, sustainable agriculture and food production. And so next month, the second Wednesday of May, which I forget what day that is that the 12th of May?
Yes, it is. It's the 12th of May, Wednesday, 12th of May, Lucy.
It is. Sorry, I didn't write that down the date on my screen, for example, for some reason. So yes, we go back to our sustainable agriculture theme, and we've got Oliver Rubinstein, who some of you might have met, who's a really great speaker. He's got a really big wealth of experience in farming and sustainability and organic farming, and he runs his own business as well. And he works with the NFU. So we really believe the importance of talking to farmers and hearing from them, people who are actually on the ground. Some of you might have come to our veganic farming event last month, which was fantastic with Ian Tolhurst. So we're continuing that theme. So that's next month, 7:30. But if you signed up for our events, then you'll hear about that. But you'll also be able to keep in touch and see what we're doing with the links I've put on. So that's the Twitter and Facebook and our website as well. I think I've put the website on there. I have. And I think that's all I've got to say. Colin, do you want to add anything, or Heather, do you want to add anything before we go?
No, but let's just get on.
I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And we're all so inspired and energised by this evening's event. Thank you so much, Alan, Jane, Lucy, and everybody.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming. I think we've had a good audience. So yeah, go away and tell everybody about the Green Business Network, about Midas and the inspiration, and more than anything, the urgency, because we don't really have much time to talk about this. It really is urgent. And if you haven't seen Climate Change: The Facts, go and watch it. It will change you. You won't be the same person after you've watched it, however many other films you've watched, I think we can safely say. So thank you everyone, and hopefully see you soon. Take care. Thanks you
everyone. Bye now.
Bye.
Good, very good.
So thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Lucy, for chairing it so brilliantly as well. I thought
it went really smoothly, didn't it?
Yeah, very important. And it's great that we've recorded it as well. Let's stop recording it. We can do that, can't we?